again, thank you for coming. So I'm going to try to read some numbers and statistics for you before we move on, but I'll introduce myself first. So my name is Elnaz Shadras. I'm the director of Voices of the World. So we do mostly EU projects in education, training, and gender and culture. This project, as I shared with some of you, was actually a recent incident, a personal incident, which kind of at one point, as a person who writes projects, suddenly hit me, and I said, no, I need to raise my voice about this because I can't be the only woman suffering with this. I'm sure most women do too. I noticed that, as I mentioned a while ago, how normalized this has become, and as women, we don't support each other as much as we should. So just that being said, I would also like to introduce you my colleagues and our speakers for tonight, but please do remember this is supposed to be a debate, so it's for you to have a voice as well. So do not hesitate to interrupt, to say your opinion, even if you disagree, and to share your voice as well. So here on my left, I have Athanasia. She is my project partner from Greece, from Athens. Athanasia, would you like to introduce yourself a bit?
Hello, everybody. My name is Athanasia Defingou. I represent Active Citizens Partnership from Greece. We are located in northern Greece, actually, but we have offices in Athens. I have been working for many years in the field. I work mostly with refugees and immigrants and asylum seekers. My studies were a long time ago in Canada on women's studies then. We call them gender studies now. So I have an interest on the topic, and when Elnaz, who is a friend of mine, we met through different European projects, proposed this Erasmus small-scale project about sexual harassment, I showed interest, and it shows that it's going to be a very interesting project. Thank you all for being here today.
And we have Lisa, who's a representative of the Punt organization in Antwerp. It's an organization that works with victims and helps them with mental health and overcoming these issues. Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, super lovely to be here. Thank you for the invite as well. I think I wear indeed different hats because I've always worked in the public sector, NATO, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I've also noticed quite some behaviors there professionally. I can see a couple of people already being like, you know what you're talking about? So for me, there's always been a bit of an activist within me as well. Like you, as a woman, of course, you need to I wasn't born in like a crib of gold. Like, of course, you want to move forward and be a professional and work, but there's so much more to it when you're working in that environment. That there's always been a feminist side to it, a very activist side to it, and I think I found that with Punt in Antwerp. So I think those different experiences now are very much intertwined, and I think right now I'm a freelance advisor in Punt to help them move forward. And yeah, super passionate about it and super happy to be here tonight with all of you.
Thank you, Lisa. And we also have Thalia. Thalia is a victim. She's an advocate and a spokesperson for the victims and survivors. And she goes around in schools and universities in order to raise awareness about this issue. And I really appreciate her work and all her volunteer work that she does in this area, and so we thought she'd be also someone good to give courage to people to speak up more. So Thalia, would you also like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. I'm not a native English speaker, so I'm really going to try my best. So I am a spider myself, and I'm also a classical singer, and after it happened, I came across a few mountains to climb, and because of that I started speaking up about my story, and now I give lectures and I try to educate schools of how sort of these dynamics happen and how you can prevent them hopefully, and at last how you can heal from them. I'm not going to say I healed fully, but I think I got a little bit more grasp than I had at the beginning of my story. That's why I'm here, I think.
Thalia.
Right, so just to start with, I'm going to give you a few numbers and digits just to be a bit more statistical and researcher mindset, but then the rest of the activity is supposed to be a bit more of an interactive activity. So, as you all know, probably during COVID, with all the lockdowns, there was a lot of violence happening, especially in households. However, this number has increased immensely after COVID as well. So sexual harassment and sexual violence among non-partners as well has increased immensely. So we have a specific number from the UK with 193,000 reported cases in less than a year that took place after COVID, in fact. So after everything reopened again. And imagine how many go unreported. Most of us don't report it. That's another issue, right? So, which we will get to as well in a minute. And then, of course, in Belgium, our regions being quite different, as all of you know, we have the Flemish, the French, and the Brussels region. And all of these regions have their own stories, but their statistics show that based on the economical situation, the sexual violence is actually more in regions that have more poverty and challenges in their society. I was just sharing this case where my brother in uptown Brussels, walking at 10 o'clock at night, was approached by a woman, saying that how much would you pay if I sell myself to you? And her boyfriend was just standing 2 steps behind her. And he said, why would you want to sell yourself to me? Because I need the money. Why do you need the money? Because my boyfriend needs to buy drugs. So this is, I'm giving you just a small example, and of course all of these go unreported. And this is some kind of violence and assault as well, which we don't categorize as a sexual violence because there's no touching necessarily involved, but why don't we call it that? Because it is definitely a type of crime. So, as you know, the section that we have on clothing, which is at the end of the corridor, it's about victim blaming. And I don't know if any of you have heard the term before, victim blaming. Yeah, it's a very familiar term. And some of us already know it since our parents, basically our mothers or our fathers, you know, it's because your skirt was too short or because you laughed out loud that you invited this attitude or this harassment on you. And unfortunately, this continues even in Europe. And even in Europe, we are still victim blaming each other. And it does come with family education, economical background, but nonetheless, it still is very engraved on most people's mentality. So this is something we need to change, and we need to work together in changing this engraved mentality that a woman is requesting this because of the way she dresses or behaves. Another thing I'd like to address as well is the unity of women. I already spoke to 1 or 2 of you on this matter. I call it, well, we had to talk about this with Thalia actually some time ago, which we call it the hypocrisy of feminism, where women tend to say, well, I'm a feminist. You know, I'm all about empowering other women. But when the time comes and you say, this person did this to me, that woman is ready to turn her back, say you were a liar, you asked for it, you were in that position, and this and that. And your own closest person sometimes turns your back on them. So I question, and I have questioned many times, how are we feminists if we're not there to empower and be there for each other and support each other? When we question men's attitude, how are we not supporting one another? And I think that this is also something that as women we need to move forward and work together in improving. Is everyone on board with me, or yes?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Another thing is that about reporting. As you know, most incidents go unreported, whether it's by the partner directly or whether it's by an unknown person or a family member. And unfortunately, I had invited a policewoman friend of mine to attend today, but she had some issues and she couldn't come. But she told me to pass this message, which I found, well, a little upsetting. That you know that if you report it, it's not really going to do you anything. Even after violence, apparently you have some experience, don't you?
How can you prove it?
How can you prove it? So you actually have to wait until it happens to you, and then once you have bruises or something on yourself to show, exactly. And also most cases they even ask for a witness if you want to take it forward. But okay, if you're sexually assaulted, where are you going to find a witness, right? Because usually it's not done in front of people. So unfortunately, the law is not on our side either. And this is something else that we need to take forward as well. And as women, we need to empower each other. And as I said, for me, what was upsetting, it's definitely not my friend's fault. It's the legislation. She's also a female police. But as a female police, she can't do anything either because it's the law. So I think that we should, as people, move together forward to protect each other in this cause in that sense. So there is a failure. Our society is failing us. The people around us are failing us. But we're here today, so that's already a good sign. And there's more and more movements on this issue, which is already a good sign. And I appreciate people that are working towards this. Our colleagues that are here, and of course you who are here as well, to try to make a change in our society, not to fail us, our daughters, our sisters, our mothers. I also have a story that really has broken my heart. I was 15 years old, and a relative's mother was raped and killed at the age of 87 by the concierge, who was only 20 years old. So these things, there's no age, there's no beauty, there's no ugliness, it just is violence. So let's not be critical of what happens to other people because it happens to everyone, right? So we should be there for each other. Thank you so much. If anyone wants to add something, please feel free.
One thing that, I mean, even if the legislation is failing us, one thing that the police could already do from today is to say, I trust you, I believe your story, and I will take your plans.
Yeah. And I do, if I may, I do see a little bit of a evaluation there, not so much already, but I think this is something that Punt also tries to do. Sometimes there are actually lectures to police people, how to react psychologically safe, how to behave. So the thing that you're saying is so pointedly correct, because that could help so much already in moving away from the victim blaming, right? That you're as a victim, that you feel supported and not being like searched for bruises or whatever. So definitely can. There is a slight.
Yeah, there is a slight improvement, yes. Yeah. In the sense that we need to train the police. But that kind of makes you question, how sad is as a society, how sad are we that we cannot empathize with someone suffering and at that moment just trying to say, it's okay, we believe you, even if you can't do anything on the legal side. So we actually have to provide training to policemen who are supposed to protect us.
I'm going to make it worse.
Okay, go ahead.
A non-profit organization needs to train policemen.
Yeah. to know how to
that are actually the policemen, they come from the state, so there's a clear state failure there. Like there's a big hiatus, because otherwise, why do these non-profits pop up? Why do they feel the urge to be there? Because there's a hiatus as well.
Yes. I remember, so the reason I reached out to Punt organization, can I share the history?
Yeah.
So 5 years ago, some of you who are more familiar to Belgium, 5-6 years ago, I guess, there was 2019, right? There was a girl who was raped in Antwerp by the river, and her body was thrown into the river. This was all already on camera as well, if I remember. It was filmed partially as well.
Not the entire scenario, but like the culprit.
Right. But even with that being said, you know, it was very hard to prove that this had happened. So the Punt organization had gained my respect in the sense that as women they got together and they said, okay, if other women can't reach out to police, they can reach out to us. So when you said that these organizations are popping up to be able to support these kind of women, it's exactly this, because the state is failing women in that aspect. So women, in this case, are definitely supporting other women.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a nuance there that's not always a popular nuance, but also men, like victims in general.
Mhm.
I think the Punt is really there to help every
Yes, of
victim,
course.
but it's
Yeah.
still a different.
Yeah. Our project, yeah, definitely. Our project is about, our project is mostly focused on women, but in fact we did also get stories from men, and men of all ages, also very young men who have been victim of sexual violence. It is also sad that we don't manage to talk about them as much as we'd like to, because they are also victims. However, our project is more focused on women, so we are continuing on this. But please do not think that we're dismissing the importance of sexual violence towards men as well. Yes?
Yeah. Question, are you advocating for a specific article in penal law, like under the banner of feminicide?
I would say Punt would be the right organization who would be proper to do such a thing. As an organization, as Voices of the World, since we work European level and international level, and touch really on the surface of Belgium.
I'm not talking about Belgium specifically, just in
Yes.
general. Are you, would you be, are you an opponent or advocate for a specific article in penal laws of any European country?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the ideal situation was that we have another event. If anyone is interested, we will definitely send you off at the invites as well. That we hold another event with MEP, the Director of UN Women, and other advocates in this field, where we actually ask them to see what can be legally done on a European level. Not just on each country, although it does go to a country level legislation, but maybe we can actually make a movement to make it more of a European level penalizing.
Anyway, the question stays the same. If you have now, for example, sexual violence, it's one article, or murder, or violence against any person. It's a specific article. Do you want a separate article for violence against women specifically, or not?
I think there are, sorry if I may.
No, please go.
For Belgium in 2022, because that's why I wanted to also jump on the story of the police officer.
Yeah.
In 2022, they've actually opened up the criminal section law, where it's now a much more redefined, much broader law right now, where victims don't need to prove their bruises anymore. There's more time. Like, there's a lot of articles that I, of course, have not retained for tonight. So I do think it is already more specific towards that specific subject, and I do think, coming from Punt, that it is necessary.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure.
But please.
Because it would be under the banner of feminicide. It's one of, you see, especially here in the neighborhood, there's often campaigns for feminicide. But then you would have specific articles for also violence or sexual violence against members of the LGBTQI plus community. And then other communities want specific articles for their violence. So Muslims are asking the same. You have anti-Semitism, they want anti-Muslim hate, or I don't know. You know, it's very quickly, every victim wants its specific article, and I think it's a dangerous evolution. I think you should stay more. Violence is violence against women, men, or whoever.
Maybe the
And
traditional.
I'm not discussing that women and violence against women need merit.
It's a big word, you know. It's very, very young.
Yeah, but it
Do you
is
know
important.
feminicide is law? Do you know it? I
No,
can hear
not
it.
for the moment.
It's a law.
Yeah, but it's not a specific article.
Yes, it is. Sarah Schmitz and Marie-Colline Leroy, secrétaire d'État. It's a law now in Belgium. I have it on mail.
Okay.
It's very, very difficult to know. Look at
Difficult to
Look
what?
at Google.
Yeah, difficult
Feminicide.
for what?
To make the definition first.
Yeah.
You mean is it very vague?
And that's why I think it's better to stay
I was there.
in the one violence is violence. If it's
No,
against-
it's not, no, I don't agree with you. No.
Okay.
It's so
So
Specific.
you're saying that they shouldn't be categorized because then every category would want their own legislation.
Yes.
Well, I think that's also been the reason it's been stopped in actually having its own legislation all along, because they tended to kind of, use the same reason as you're giving, that everybody will ask for this defense. But this issue has existed as long as history of human beings and civilized humans has existed. And so the fact that women have to still stay a second citizen in the sense of proving themselves when it comes to this, I think that's because if you think about it, the LGBT community or other Muslims in Europe or and other minorities, let's say, indeed, they historically, they've always been there, of course, but the whole concept is new. But the concept of men and women, patriarchal society, it's a historical issue that's always existed as long as human beings have existed.
I wouldn't say minorities, the fear or the violence against the other has always existed, especially when he is a minority, he or her.
Yes, but it still doesn't go as far as back as men and women.
And women are not minorities, like you have women in each minority. And women are in every minority too. Like women are.
Yeah, of course.
I want to make your point also. Women is men and women is not 50-50 at the gut, but we can acknowledge
It's a major group.
It's a major group, and Muslim women, women from minorities, they are women. So we have this very big topic. And to be honest, I don't want to discriminate men, but most of the perpetrators are men. Most of the victims, till this day, maybe because we don't have the numbers, I don't know why, are women. So it is very Bible to say there's a very big problem between the two genders.
It makes sense to actually pinpoint that in law.
Yeah, because Muslim women, they also have this thing, also their religion that's on top of it, but they are women. That is their core. Yeah, and I think if you're oh, now we need to stop splitting up violence. I also ask myself that question. I don't know what's the right thing to do, but I do know this is a very big problem, and two key components are there. Perpetrators are men, and most of the victims are women, and it doesn't matter in which group they are women, and it's half of the population. So.
Well, it's an interesting debate, for sure. But you could also, or efforts should certainly go towards measuring, because I don't know if you have precise numbers of assaults or violence against women, but the police is not, in my connaissance, in my experience, the numbers that the police are keeping are absolutely incorrect and absolutely not complete.
I'm going to go right into it. The numbers that you speak of, 30.
I'm speaking that they don't exist. That there are no numbers. They're working in the dark.
You want to grasp it's really statistical research, even though you know it's not there at the moment, and you do know it, so that's really good. But 30 years ago, rape between husband and wife was not rape. How do you say it? What is assault? And I think that's also, if you speak of numbers, you really need to keep that in mind. 30 years ago, rape between husband and wife was not rape. Homosexuality was a crime. These are all concepts that we adapted through humanitarian evolution, I call it. Because we realize that it's not really okay. So maybe what now for most women a common experience is being whistled at the street. Now we be it's sexual harassment, but maybe in 10 years, maybe in 100 years, I hope so, people will be that's a crime, I'm not
Because it's specified.
Yeah. So numbers, I really have difficulty with that word and with that sense of, I do understand we need it to like grasp the problem, but like be aware it's not that like that scientifically as they try to
Make it clear.
But honestly, like the thing is, if you look at, let's say, the worst thing, like the worst form of violence, which would be femicide, like the murder of women, and they're like, you can say that it's a structural problem, men killing women because they're women. And there you have
I'm not denying, no?
but I mean for this you have the number.
Yeah?
Yes, of course.
I'm sorry, you're in a room full of women.
But I have some experience with Belgian police as well, and I know that numbers are inadequate to the bone.
Yeah.
So
But you know, there are
I'd be
some.
very surprised if they have right numbers on feminicide, for example.
They
Very
have some,
sensitive.
they have
They have
numbers,
some, but
but there are two words, feminicide and femicide.
it's not the same?
Not the same, no.
Okay.
Femicide intime. Look at Google, you will see, it's long. You know, look at it. Do you know Ixelles?
No.
It's French. It's éducation relationnelle et sexuelle.
Oh yes, that's right.
They've been burning. It must be. We have to do it from the beginning at schools.
Yeah.
But some schools they have been burned in Wallonia. Burned. Yes.
Yeah, fire and birds.
Fire. Yes. But Ixelles is a good thing. Look at it. Google it.
Yeah, I know.
Nobody makes sense.
I was in the group, and the children may ask questions. It's not the parents who decide. The children ask questions, little children.
Yeah.
But first you have to know what it is, Raes.
Yeah.
It's sexual education, relationnel aussi.
Yeah. And I think that since I worked in education as well, I think that the lack of education in this aspect,
It's so important.
it's incredibly low.
Yeah. Sorry if I may. I worked with some Flemish people in Belgium. Like I worked with Hugo de Liekens as her advisor in Parliament, and she's very fascinating. And she had very good points as well, because she was like, in the Netherlands, for example, people in the primary schools and even before in kindergarten, they actually learn to indicate boundaries. They're like, I'm sorry, I don't like them, without it being passive-aggressive or just a super respectful boundary setting is possible. You can actually do that without it having to be a conflict or culturally disapproved of. And she was like, you really need to install, so Ixelles is also a very important aspect, that you have to, as of the beginning of it, learn and educate people on how to set boundaries and how to say no from both ways. From just, like, this is my area, and I am very much in my power to say no, yes, and to educate my own
You
boundaries.
can learn it.
Yeah, it's a very cultural thing as well.
And that was my lucky day, my parents. They already talked about LGBTQ after the war. Yes, they were so open-minded. And they talked about sexual things. And that's my lucky day. They still live in me. You can tell it if you want, to everyone.
But indeed, it's important that we try to install this in the education systems.
Yeah.
I mean, sex education goes back as quite a far time. I mean, I also had sex education when I was I think I was already 10 years old. So why not also add this into the sex education classes that we have in schools to already bring up children in, in this aspect, especially if we're talking also about the LGBT communities as well, because I've had incidents and stories by friends, male friends, who were also harassed by other gay men in certain locations, and they were feeling uncomfortable about this. And interestingly, they're not young men either. So it's more common to hear it from young people, but these people are also not that young. So this, I think, is important in various aspects, and not just about women, but also just all communities as well. That's why it should be engraved in the education system in that sense. But I'll give the floor to Lisa. You want to? Yeah.
Where do I start? Because now I have my structure in mind, and now because of the conversation, I'm like, whatever we can talk about. You already introduced Punt a little bit, right?
Yes, but please go ahead and speak of.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, so in 2019, I think there was a lot of anger with the Belgian population. It was just like, how on earth can this happen again? Also because the guy was already being sentenced before and was just walking around freely again, and this happened. Sorry, either you share or you just so I think there was there was a lot of anger within the population, and there was this big march, and Punt actually came into existence then. And I think it's a non-profit that's a very big hiatus between what the state is not doing and what victims actually need. Because I think a very important pillar of Punt, and tell me if is also prevention, like creating awareness through campaigns, sensitizing people, boundary setting, but also like letting people know that they are empowered, whoever they are, that everyone has a voice. I think that's a very good point. And I think there's also the helping and supporting the victims, of course. The first point of contact for victims who feel too afraid to go to police or feel like time has passed. There is no time anymore, I cannot prove it anymore. So there needs to be an organization that actually can help them move forward. And I think they can come to films, well, I know they can come to films for medical care, psychological care, just to see with the council, like, okay, what do you want to do with this? Thank you for already giving us your story and laying it on us, not just you dealing with it by yourself, dealing with normal victim. So I think that's the premise of Punt.
You were also going to talk about the legislation and a little bit about
yes,
the situation.
Indeed. So there's this very activist side to Punt because, of course, the march and there was this anger that needed to find its way. And I think we've accomplished quite a bit because now we're 5 years later, and in Belgium, Flanders, and that's the thing I want to make a little bit of a nuance there. Belgium, as you mentioned before, is a very complicated country for a very small one. And a lot of the legislation and money, and I've seen this working in cabinets as well, it is so divided, and it's something that's a very personal stance that really bugs me because I'm like, oh my god, you have all these resources and these smart cookies. What if you put them together to create like a big platform to help people? But it's often like, that organization gets a little bit, that one gets a little bit, like that, and we're doing this a little bit. So there's a lot of work, like if it were my world, I'd like to have like a big women's cabinet, but we're not there yet. So that in those 5 years, now 10 centers of sexual care have been founded, so it's in Flanders. And in 2022, the legislation has changed for the better already, so the law on sexual and criminal violence has already expanded, it's broader now. People don't need to prove anything, not that much anymore, if I'm not mistaken. There's more time for you to actually go to the police. So I'm feeling that we're very much on the right pathway, but also there's a lot of, and I think I'm going to say, especially now, that there's still so much to do, and I think it's important to hold on to that wave and not just be like, that was me too, that was 2016, what else is new? Because we have to continuously work on this through education, through management, prevention is so important, making it a super valid subject to do so. I'm going to give you a personal example. There's a friend of my husband, a friend of my poor husband. There's a friend of my husband, and he is a very good guy. He's super loyal, super amicable, but he calls women, and it's a Dutch accent, called them. He once denominates them as Raes, which I cannot really translate very much in English, but it's not super respectful. And I was like, I'd rather not. Like, can you just say girl or woman? I don't really like that term because it makes us smaller already. And then within that setting, I was like, look at her being feminist. I was like, your reaction is exactly what's wrong. Because I should be able to say so without you denominating me or labeling me. I'm like, no.
Or even being called difficult.
Or bossy.
Or yes. As women, we're difficult.
Yeah. So I think Punt, and this is also a place where I can actually relieve some of that activism and anger, but I think like it's so much often it's subtleties, like it's often super subtle, and you can actually indicate your boundaries without it it's not bad to just say, I prefer not to do things. It's like, it's fine, it's not a conflict. And I think the prevention and the sensitizing is something that Punt still creates a very good, it's still needed. Like there's too much of a hiatus still, I have the feeling.
From my experience, I think Punt helped me the most as an organization because they carry about the gray zones.
Yeah.
Like sexual assault is not like, oh, someone took me in an alley. It's like a partner of mine, he went over my boundaries. I don't know if it's severe enough to like go to the police, but then it goes further and further and further, and before you know it, it's like a full-blown sexual assault. And then people are like, why didn't you say anything? And then I came to Punt, and they were like, you don't need to report, like your story is valid. It was the first time after I kind of tried to talk to people about it that I heard like, it is valid, even though you didn't report it, even though there was no complaint about it, like it happened. And that is something that other organizations don't do. It's like, is there a complaint? What did you do? Like all those, yeah, what happened practically? Like how damaged were you? But they mean them like physically, but it's not only physically. And didn't really make that kind of
Capture the
yeah. They really captured it. And that was the first time that I heard that, and I was like, here I want to be part of. Like, so yeah, that is the big picture.
I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, lovely. Yes.
How does it work when a victim wants to go to Punt? Because I was looking at the website.
So you can apply for like sponsorship help, and then you can get an appointment with a counselor, and then they just see very freely what's up. Like there's no obligation. They won't be like, fill in this report, and we'll go to the. It's a very.
And when you ask for this like for help, how long does it take for them to answer? Because I don't see like a phone number or something where they can call.
I think we'll be active. Well, you don't, because I didn't do it with Slackfoot. I did it back then because I was in 2021, I think. There was a book that was published, and at the back I found the email address, and then I just wrote to them, and that's how I could contact them. Now you can like help at Punt help individuals at Punt. You can write like, hey, I heard about you. Can you?
Yeah, they're quite responsive.
Yeah.
Is there
I
something
think
like maybe chat or something? Because email is not so.
I think chat is
That's so, and I don't want to. I don't like. But that's the thing with the government and the funding. Like those kind of things we don't have yet. Like because I really want a full-blown organization that offers those more subtle approaches as well. It's a very good point.
But to your question, actually, I actually had it in my notes as well, which I forgot to mention, is that one of the struggles I had, even doing research on this topic, was that there are literally almost nowhere for women to go. And when I was doing, I'm sorry?
No, please.
No, I mean,
There is something important, I think, I'm sure you know, there's in every province there's Zorgcentrum Seksueel.
That's what I mentioned, right?
yeah,
I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
that's the thing.
Is that
Interestingly, so I looked in Brussels and I searched. So there were one or two numbers, which were like, speed numbers like hospitals or ambulances and so forth. But I didn't call those numbers, but it was also not easy to find. And because, I mean, if you are under a violent situation and you need immediate help, it took me, and I'm a researcher, and it took me such a long time to find a number. And I found it so uncomfortable in the sense that what if I was in that situation, or someone I cared about is in that situation, needs to find a number immediately, and wants to call secretly? How do you do that? Because in fact...
Sorry to intervene, and then I'm leaving because I need to be somewhere else. But normally police, ambulances, they all should be aware that in every province, and in Brussels, so it's the region, there is a 24/7 service for violence, that is sexual harassment, that you can call and that you can go to immediately. There's
If I can nuance that a little bit, indeed, so we have the 10 now in Flanders, which is great. That's a very big accomplishment. It's always said, right, I can have it. But the thing is there, and we see it with Punt, and that's the hiatus still, is we have those, which is amazing, but it's for direct care. And people who tend to be like processing this so much at months afterwards, this is where people
that's the difference.
If I just may, because
also,
what's your background?
I'm president of the council of Elzenhof.
Oh, yeah.
Elzenhof. But I used to.
Okay.
But I used to work as an advisor for the Minister of Justice at the time of Julie Van Es, but not on the subject of.
So, as someone who worked in that sector,
That's interesting.
No, I didn't work in the sector. I worked as an advisor for the Minister of Justice,
right.
but in a completely different, not on people,
Okay.
not on.
The thing is, I find that politicians, interestingly, in Belgium, so I have friends who work to help in certain ministries. The politicians are unaware what's happening really on the ground. Whether it's about driving a car or whether it's about how many people are French speakers or Dutch speakers in Brussels, for that matter. Sometimes I feel there's a huge disconnection in that aspect. One of them being this kind of, let's say, crime that exists in households. And our topic today is about sexual violence, but during COVID, there was household violence, both to men or to women or towards children. That kind of crime existed a lot. Many went unreported. The ones that went reported were not handled. So the sense of the security which the state has to offer is lacking. And as I said, I'm a researcher. For me, finding information on the internet is super easy. I'm also an AI trainer. So finding information through AI is also very easy for me. But yet finding this information was so difficult. And on top of it, reaching out to people was also difficult. So interestingly, some of these organizations, they were not willing to help either, which is something that also made me question this whole thing, is that there are other organizations like Punt, but they're not willing to help, to reach out, because I told them that, through these projects, we also, especially in Brussels, reach out to the expat community, which is a very, very big community in Brussels. But because of this was also lacking. I said, okay, you're reaching the Dutch community, the Flemish community, you're reaching the French community, but what about the big group of expat communities, or immigrants, for that matter? And nobody really helped. So I feel like there is really a lack of connection here, a lack of communication, a lack of connection in that sense of as empathizing really with another human being, for that matter. Yes. So okay. Yes. Sorry.
Yes,
Comment.
I have to make information. There is in Thalia hospital.
Mm-hmm.
There is a center of helping victims for. Especially for
yes, but I want to say that the police never brings the victims to this or tells them that it exists.
I just know the center open 24 hours.
Yes, but the police never brings them.
They're working on it now. I do think indeed there's not enough implementation of the things that are actually happening. Indeed, they are there, but the police doesn't know. The same that you mentioned with your friend, it's like they still need to send this. Probably she has not even there.
She didn't have any idea
briefed about the new law.
No,
so
and also they only speak French there.
Yes, my friend as well. She's a French speaker. She speaks a little English, but no Flemish.
Yeah.
So I think that's another issue. I think is that the communication between the communities in Belgium is also an issue. And interestingly, you can find policemen from migrant backgrounds that speak the migrant languages, but you don't have the French speakers speaking Flemish, for example. So indeed, there is a lack of communication, and also a lack of knowledge among the security service in Belgium. So it's not because they don't want to help, but I guess they don't know. They just simply don't know.
There's
a lack of
implementation.
a lack of.
I just have another question. Is there something like Unsilenced in Brussels? Not yet. But the Slachtoffer Thalia, you were talking about Ciavi,
One question. What's the name of the association we were talking about? BIMS? Or what is that?
The one talking about?
Yes, BIMS or BOOMS?
PUNS. It means like point in Dutch, and it's really like we're putting a point, like we're super angry.
Ah, okay.
That's true, right? We're making really angry. Sorry, this is enough.
something like that.
Yeah.
And you were at that association as an advisor? Ah, okay.
Right. So, Thalia, would you like to? We have a little bit of an interactive event with Athanasia, and then maybe we can go to your story after that. Is that okay with you? Yeah. So Athanasia also has a bit of an interactive thing.
I'll try. The gentleman who was making questions before is not here, but there are some numbers given out, and the number says that 50% of women have been sexually harassed by the age of 15. And I would like to do a small exercise with men and women in this group. The ones who want to attend, the others cannot attend. If you don't feel safe, if you don't want to express yourself, you don't attend this type of exercise. So I have a few questions to ask you. The ones who have been sexually harassed, let's raise their hand. Okay. So we are reaching the number of 50%. The ones who have been more than once sexually harassed, raise.
But do you mean with
Sometimes you don't know the
anything. Somebody, if you walked on the street and a guy went like, I like your boobs, whatever. Sometimes you don't know. Correct. I know that's what the ladies would exactly the same. We didn't know excuse me, someone, I have to be on the microphone.
Oh, you can.
Someone who has been harassed by family members or members or people they knew.
People that knew or family members.
We confess.
Someone who was sexually harassed and talked to members of the family and they didn't believe them. Okay, that's a good sign. And
But maybe we can also didn't believe them or victim blamed.
There were too many ifs and buts in the same.
someone who spoke to authorities after sexual harassment. Is someone here who was sexually harassed and went and spoke to authorities? One, two. Before we had about 15 people, but only two went to the authorities. These are a few questions that give us an idea of what is going on, and I'm sorry that the gentleman is not here to see that sexual harassment is...
Or how easy it is to get numbers as well, right?
How easy it is to get numbers. I would like to continue a bit with the case in Greece. What is happening in Greece, and we'll continue afterwards with another activity. Greece is a country that most of you know because it's a beautiful, hot, warm country with one foot in Asia and one foot in Europe, one foot in the Balkans, one foot in Europe. So what happened, the Me Too campaign that started all over Europe, in the States and Europe, that We had the opportunity also in Greece, and it started with a very famous athlete, Sofia Dakatorou, who came out and spoke about her situation of the rape she had gone. She was raped when she was 22 years old by the vice president of the Hellenic Sailing Association, a very high up guy, up in the hierarchy of athletics in Greece. So she came out and she spoke. After her, many women, well-known women from the arts, from theater, from all fields, came out and spoke about it. And the survivors, what they did, they reported their traumatic experience wherever they were given space and time and someone to listen to them and believe them, because it's very important to find a safe place to talk and someone to believe you and not to victimize you once more, as Elnaz mentioned at the beginning, of being victims and not believing you. So I would like to ask you, what is the common denominator on the discussion we have today, what we have discussed so far? There is a common denominator, as we do in mathematics. That is the exercise of gender and sexual violence or harassment or violence by some toxic masculinity. Actually, Thalia said before, or the lady said, that the victims are mostly women, the perpetrators are mostly men. So there is a toxic masculinity that we have to fight against. And it's a nice thing that we have men here, and we can discuss later on how we can do it. So the perpetrators not only abuse and harass women in their work context, in their educational context, in their everyday life context, in the athletic centers or wherever, but also they try to keep them unsilenced. That's what gives them the hierarchy they have and the patriarchy of our society. Keeps all these women unsilenced. And I was wondering if you know what resilience means. I was wondering why Elnaz put that word, resilience, in our project. Can somebody give me what resilience means? It's a new word, has come out in European Union recently. Everybody is talking about the resilience, but if you go in my village and you ask any woman, her life is a resilient life, because resilience is the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult and challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility. So these women who have gone through sexual harassment, they have to be resilient in order to survive. And Thalia is going to speak about that later on. So we have collected testimonies in Brussels and in Greece. If you go out on the street right now or in the square further down, there are many testimonies of different women of different age, of different race, of less kilos, of more kilos, or whatever, that they have gone through sexual harassment in their life. And what happened with the Greek society, and I'm very happy that young ladies from Greece are here with us today, the Greek society became deaf and also blind. They were not seeing anything, what was happening all these years, and deaf when the Me Too you started in Greece, they were not listening. Or they came out with this interesting question. Well, why Becaton remember it now after 22 years to come and talk? Why now? That's a question they are always making. Well, this woman had faced this situation 10 years ago. Why is she speaking now? Because now is the time. Now she's safe. Now she can do it. Now she can
Find the courage.
Exactly, find the courage to do it. And I have to give you a small example. I have a young daughter. She is 14 years old. And we go in the village I come from, there is this guy who is from Albania. He is homeless. He lives around the village, but he is sexually harassing young girls. So during Easter, he was exposing himself to two young girls. One of them was my daughter. So she comes home and she tells me, Mom, this and this happened. Next morning, although it was Easter, I went to the police to the next city, 15 kilometers away. I found two nice, handsome policemen. They had a piece of paper in front of them with nothing, just a blank piece of paper. I said, my name is this and that, and I live in a village next to Thebes, and I came to report what is happening. Well, he tells me, it's very interesting that you come here, but we cannot do anything. I said, but why? Because the victims have to come. I said, up to this point, we don't have a victim. Thank God we don't have a victim. But we have a person who is homeless, and he goes around doing different things. He said, unfortunately, although I believe you, we cannot do anything. Tomorrow, if we find a car and an officer, we'll come into the village and we'll talk to the coffee places and tell them not to give him food or anything. So he decides to leave because he will not find any help in the village. Nothing else. So I cannot do anything because they are waiting for him to harass someone and then to go and do the next steps. So what do we need? Because all of us that are here today, you are interested about the topic, we have experience, we know. The point is, so what? We discuss it today, we leave it there? No. We have to do something. And first of all, what we have to do is, we need to have brave women between us. Brave women who are going to destigmatize the violence and the sexual harassment, who have to come out and talk. And also we have to educate our boys and our girls of what sexual harassment is. As you asked very well, I am teaching my daughter every day and I'm telling her what sexual harassment is. A friend of hers, she's coming home and she picks up her telephone, checking her Instagram to see if she has said something wrong about him. I tell her that's harassment. It's not a sexual harassment, but it's harassment. So it's on us. We have to train our daughters, our sons, of what is sexual harassment and what the boundaries are. So what we need? Brave women. And we have with us here Thalia, who is a brave woman, and she is going to give us her story today. Thank you.
Like, all the hands that were up are brave women because you spoke. Like, you didn't say anything, but you showed it. So that's in itself bravery, I guess. I think I find it very difficult if people call me brave. I'm gonna try. I am very, may sound very weird, but I have very light speaking voice with a very loud singing voice, so I'm gonna try my best. I think bravery in itself is like not the word of choice I would choose. have the chance today to sit here and speak about it. And I'm very, very happy that you all want to listen. Because now I'm not silenced anymore. But I do hope that you all find, if you have had something happen to you, that you also find a medium to talk about it. It doesn't have to be on a stage, it can also be in support groups. I went to Punt and I went to a support group there, and that was like my first step when I had my sexual assault. And after that, I kind of worked a lot with Punt. And then I became a volunteer myself, and now I lead my own support group, and I'm very happy with it because every month I see brave people gathering around that table and having the conversations what we're talking about now. My story started when I was 23. Before that, I also had a lot of sexual harassment on the streets and like alas, the typical things you have happened to you when you're a teenage girl. But I also come from a family where we're very kind and very nice, and we also try to like respect everybody. But the thing is, you also need to learn that people need to respect you. And that is something I did not know until it happened. My mom is here also today. And she also like went through it with me because the first time that I talked to the story about it to her, she was also not in a place that she could really listen. And then we had a lot of conversation afterwards about it because I did not feel hurt at the moment. And now she's here, so that's like for me a very thing. So I also want to. It's very cultural in like families. We have a very sweet, nice going family. We didn't want to like be too outspoken about topics because we didn't want to make men's things. And then that happened and it like scattered everything that I knew. Because that was the lifestyle that I knew, that was my personality that I knew, and suddenly someone, even though I told him I did not want it, went over that boundary. And I did not know how to cope. So if you talk about education, if you talk about like make girls especially aware that boundaries are very like needed, like very strong. You really need to set your boundaries strong because it is the truth that at the moment we live in a patriarchal society and men are learned to have strong boundaries but girls don't. And to be honest, our society kind of fails because of that dynamic. And that's also, I think, thing that we are very difficult in like really making change in this process because people higher up kind of know we kind of need this dynamic to just keep on doing it because otherwise who would like pick up the pieces because women always do. And if you kind of try to adapt that system, who's going to do it then? I think that's a very important discussion, and I'm not trying to villainize men. It's not that I hate men, because my boyfriend is here also like walking around somewhere, and he's really supportive. But we had a lot of conversations about it also, because it was really needed in the beginning of our relationship, because I was really anti-gender roles. I set my boundaries after it happened so strong that a lot of men found me aggressive, and it's probably very hard for you to like understand because I know I have a very sweet, delicate voice and like look, but not if I really talk about things that I'm passionate about. And I think that's something that we kind of need to like open the conversation about, like what is the role of a woman in the society, but also are we willing to adapt that role? Because everybody says so, and then we talked about like a fake feminism. There is really a fake feminism. After it happened, I went to my best friend who worked with my perpetrator, and I told her the story, and I will never forget forget what she said at that moment. She told me, "I'm very sorry that happened to you, but I cannot combine my professional life with your private life." And that was her excuse to keep on working with that person. As I told you, I'm a classical singer, so it was in the art world. For me, it's not possible to divide private matters and art, because a lot of art thrives in societal issues and causes. So she also constantly stated on Instagram like, oh, women's rights, oh, activist things. Now also with Gaza, I don't want to like put someone against me, but now Gaza is a hot topic, and in 2019 it was sexual violence, and maybe in 2025 it will be something else, but we really need to like be there. I think the most important thing in this whole story is that there is a real asset of being a trustworthy person. And that's something that's very difficult to find when something like that happens to you, because a lot of people portray themselves like that, but it is not the reality. Because if it happens next to them, they turn away because it's a difficult conversation. I think also in the beginning when I kind of tried to talk about it, a lot of people tried to like get to fate if it was worse enough. Like, even though I'm like, a lot of victims, they test the waters first with like a little portion of the story to see how the person reacts, and then they give the full and most of the time the horrendous details of what really happened. But if you're then like, oh, that's not worse enough for me, that's not sexual harassment, like how do you kind of think people will tell you the whole story, because you're not safe, you feel that. And that's also, because they asked me, are you nervous to talk about your story? And I told them, like, not my story, but I'm nervous about the group. Are you gonna be trustworthy? Are you gonna be safe for me? Or are you gonna, no offense to the third there, before he went away, but are you gonna be really aggressive and think only out of your point of view? Because he was a male, he is a male. And he knows his privileges, but he does not know them consciously. So for him, it's maybe just a number. For me, it's my life that kind of fell apart after it happens. So that's something I really want to give away. If people want to share, because I heard some people talk like, how can I go to Punt? I can also write it down if you want to afterwards. Yeah, because we really want to give you also like a place to be safe. And Punt is that for me. I'm not going to say there's nothing going to happen because you work with people and sometimes people are unpredictable, but till this day, and I think it's now 4 or 5 years ago, I really noticed that it was the only organization that really felt safe. So that's my story, I guess.
Thank you. It takes courage. As we're all, as we said, everybody's a bit courageous, even being here and trying to contribute with their story. And of course, to the male society that's here, supporting as well. It's always nice to also have the male society in this course of helping. Yes, and to know that, you know, unfortunately, most men tend to forget that it's their brothers, their sisters, their daughters, and sometimes their best friends. And so it's a good reminder that this exists for all of us. Right? Is there anyone who would like to take the floor and share a story or share an experience? Did you want to share something? Yes?
I think it takes weeks. It's too long.
It's too long?
I share it in Brussels, in the Women's Council, and so on and so on.
Is there a suggestion?
For new laws.
Okay.
For the law. And it's courage, okay, but first of all, it is Love.
Love.
Love. It's not courage. It's love. You give love, I think.
A love for oneself or love for someone else?
You must have confidence in yourself.
So you have to love yourself.
Too. Voilà. That's it.
Yes.
Love another.
Yeah. But unfortunately, when it comes to partner violence, it starts with love and trust.
Yes.
And that's especially for the younger generation, teenage girls, or even younger than 25, I would still say, who can be vulnerable to the state. And once again, there is a lack of education in this, that, you know, as you said, if you love yourself, then it's easier to put your boundary. But the meaning of love gets lost a lot.
Yeah.
And also in the hypocrisy of feminism, the meaning of love, once it gets, because the women's unity, it gets lost, because if women, in the old, I would say it still exists in Eastern and Southern countries where women are more united, but I find that in Western and Northern Europe, and Western countries in general, yes, I think that the unity of women is still quite, it's not, yeah, it's scarce and I would say non-existent to some extent, which is a pity, because the women empowerment, even if you go and look into Muslim societies, the women empowerment among them can be extraordinary. And unlike what we have in our Western mentality about this issue, I have seen women support other women in these kind of very religious societies when there was gender violence in households. And interestingly, they don't have a therapist. They don't pay 200 euros for a therapist, but they talk to a neighbor who's a woman who supports them. And I think that that's what's really missing. If we can create that again in our societies where we empathize, we hear, and we support each other, and we empower each other to move forward, that would create a more healthier environment for all of us. But if anyone wants to add anything else? Yes?
I just wanted to say there is an abuse button. You know that?
No. Please do share.
It's also Marie-Colline Leroy, Staatssecretaris, who has introduced it, and it's going to be in Belgium everywhere. But it's starting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a hypothetical
Violence
button.
button, yes.
But how and where can you press this button?
With the you receive a button. And you know that?
We have it in Greece, yes.
Voilà.
It's called the red button, and police is loading to telephones to people who would go and complain about sexual harassment. But it doesn't really work. At this point, 4,000 red buttons have been allocated. It started, I think, a month ago. We are waiting to see the results, yeah.
But I think there was the hand movement. It was this one that was in bars and places that was that I'm in trouble and help me.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one is
yes.
But nonetheless, I think that it's still not a very clear sign. One. Too many heads are on phones. So nobody's really paying attention to the passerby or the one in the bar or the
you have the initiative where you when you go to the ladies' room, where you have like tell the bartender Barbara if you're being harassed. It's also something that
or there are special
training. Yeah, or ask for relief. Yeah, which is actually a shame because it's like solving a conflict.
Yes.
This is your previous point about like how Western countries are more united.
I'm sorry. Can you speak up a bit louder?
This is your previous point about how like Western countries like women are more united. I personally believe that it's kind of the opposite. I feel like in societies or like in particular places like Japan, women have like much less of a voice in the workplace, and especially like mothers, they have a lot less power than people in the US or in Europe.
Yeah, in the workplace. Yeah. Actually, so when I was doing this research, it was interesting that something that caught my eye was, okay, so we're used to like in the world of music, which you mentioned, arts, sports, politics. The hierarchy always abusing, even here at the European Parliament, which I'm putting a report on it recently, the things that are happening at the European institutions with hierarchy and sexual abuse. But interestingly, also in office careers, of course, as we all know it. Nonetheless, what was interesting in my research is that other women do not support their colleagues when they're sexually harassed because they do not want to lose their title and their position. And so their position and their title is more important to them than defending another woman who is visibly in front of their eyes being sexually harassed.
Which is again something to be partially cultural and not learn to set your own boundaries and respecting one another.
Yeah.
It's also like if you go deeper within those people.
Yeah, but in this sense, I would question our boundaries. So we have those kind of physical boundaries, but what about emotional boundaries? Yeah. So by setting boundaries, we're also putting a lot of distance between us and other people, which means we turn our heads when we see people suffering, because we're not privileged. I mean, we don't want to get involved because we don't want to lose our position. So interestingly, in my research, I found that professional women tend not to help other women and turn their head away because they do not want to lose their titles and positions. Which is somewhat what the story you were sharing, right? That your colleague, your friend, your best friend of many years, does not help because she didn't want to lose her position. So that's what I meant also by this unity of women. But indeed, when it comes to the movement of rights in the workplace, indeed in Asia, yes. I mean, comparatively, you're right. In the Western world, that does exist more than in Asia or the Southern world. It's just interesting how it changes, though. Because there you have the unity of women, but you don't have the men treating the women right. Here, my personal experience, of course I'm not mixing it with other people, men supported me more than the women did. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to reach out and see if it was only me or if it was other women too. And hearing Thalia's story first-handedly when we were doing this research was kind of a confirmation to me that, no, I'm not the only woman, that other women turn their backs on, you know.
I'm so sorry. With my experience at NATO and white male privilege management, it was special for me the men, and actually the women that were like, what, that actually?
Yeah, and I think in a case...
I just want to also...
but you know, but the interesting, so Lisa has worked at NATO, which is very male-dominated, and I've also worked in similar places. But the interesting part about that is that as a woman, then you have the common enemy, the patriarchal man, right? But when you're equal, let's say 50% men, 50% women, then it's different. You see what I'm saying? So as human beings, today Israel and Palestine are in war, unfortunately. But imagine one day they have a common enemy. So let's say China attacks them, right? Of course, they're going to, get together and then, and they're going to create peace in order to fight the common enemy. So in our small contexts, we do the same thing in our work environments as well. And for me, that would be my psychological analysis of this as why women behave differently in that kind of environment.
I'd say friendships as well, that there were like very good male people. It's such a nuance.
That's true. Yeah. Right. Yes, okay. It's okay. I'm running around. Athanasia, is there anything you'd like to add to wrap up this conversation? Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We will continue with the drinks.
I want to say something that the project is continuing in Greece. We are going to meet in Athens, 21st of November. As I mentioned, I work a lot with refugees and immigrant women, and we are collecting stories from them also. And it's a very interesting topic because all these very strong women who come as refugees and immigrants in our countries, and they have left their countries to have a better life. They become vulnerable groups in our countries, and they become vulnerable because they have gone through a lot, and their stories are heartbreaking. especially women who come from sub-Saharan African countries, as I mentioned, very strong women who have gone through Libya, through Turkey and other countries. And even when they come in Europe, they step their foot on Europe. That might be the first step, might be Greece. They are excluded from their families, from the society in general. So they face a double exclusion and a lot of harassment. So if you are in Greece, the 1st of November, we are going to have a continuation of this there.
And whoever would like to join is more than welcome. If you're interested to also participate probably towards the end of the year in the advocacy that we plan to do on a higher level, you're more than welcome. I think most of you have left your emails, but we do have a WhatsApp group or also other ways of keeping in touch so we can keep you informed of the next steps. So thank you to our special speakers, and thank you all for being here. I want to thank also my colleague Maxim, who did all our tech stuff, and it was a lot of work for him. So thank you, everybody.